I'm recording now. All right.
Yeah, I was master our 170th year. We actually got our lodge from over on the Eastern Shore when they surrendered their charter. I don't know if surrender is the proper word, but we started in 1849. Our original lodge, and you probably remember this, was burnt during the Civil War, and a lot of our original records and stuff like that. So what we have as far as up until like 1888, we rely on the Grand Lodge for records, whatever they may have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, yeah, because a lot of lodges, like I said, newer lodges get chartered, and it's a bigger deal to get a lower number, so they fill in the numbers. So we have gaps. But then you have about 5 or 6 lodges that all are year-based, like Virginia Research 1777. So we chose a year, the year the Grand Lodge was chartered or the year it was formed, when this or that happened. So you got a bunch in the 1700s. You got a couple in the 1900s. I guess they wanted the year they were chartered or the year that their Grandmaster was Grandmaster or something. So most of them go up through about 300 something, and then you have the 17s and the 1900s.
Yeah, it's a unique story, as I'm sure with every single lodge, kind of like last week's with the lodge up in Canada. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Brother Rodney is our guest speaker today. If you want to say hello, Rodney.
No.
Good morning, brethren.
No. Good to have you here.
Hello, Brother Rodney.
And I have never met this. It's like a magic trick. Have we ever met before?
No, we have not.
All right. Rodney and I met on some group page, and I'm like, well, hey, that sounds interesting. You want to give a talk about it? So I'm just out there recruiting more speakers because I want to bring in different people to give talks here. I think it'd be a lot of fun because there's a lot of guys out there saying, yeah, I've got to talk on this or that. So it'd be fun to bring you all in and expose you to a wider audience. I think it would be pretty neat.
Yeah, we're fortunate at Taylor Lodge. We do this about once a week. And last week we had a brother that had to demit because West Virginia doesn't allow dual membership. He was a member of our lodge, getting ready to be master of the lodge up in Morgantown, and he did a presentation on the difference between West Virginia Freemasonry and Virginia Freemasonry. It was very, very neat.
Cool. Welcome back, Brother Neil. See, I'm starting to remember people.
Good to see you.
Brother Quadro, am I saying that right?
Quadro.
Quadro?
Quadro.
Good to have you here, brother.
Welcome, brother.
And what lodge are you from?
Westgate 734, Toronto, Ontario.
Oh, good. Okay. You look Canadian. Yes.
He's my neighbor. My neighbor, about an hour away.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I do remember you from the last week.
Yeah, I've been to Westgate Lodge.
Great.
I have been to a Westgate Lodge myself, but it was in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Well, that's another interesting thing is the lodge names, Joey. When looking, I mean, not only our names, but of course, if a lodge doesn't have a website that the Grand Lodge knew about or I knew about already, I'd go Googling them. So if I put in Taylor Lodge, I might get 3 or 4 hits because there's other ones, and I have to verify the number and go in and make sure they're in Virginia, that I have the right one. And a lot of lodges share names. There's a whole lot of lodges with similar names. It's kind of cool. So Taylor Lodge was named for
Zachary Taylor.
Oh, Zachary Taylor
Taylor
for president. That's right.
Yeah, he at least that's the story that it is accepted. Just because it was chartered in 1849. Like I said, all of our original records was burnt during the Civil War. So that is the accepted plausible because we don't have very many Taylors in our records archives, oddly enough.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, that was part of the challenge too. Like I said, the Grand Lodge makes an effort to they have a page for every single lodge, like 4 or 5 pages, and they always list the secretary and their website if they have it registered and their meeting days and such like that. But their history page, it's up to the secretaries of the individual lodges to have submitted something. And there were cases where there was nothing. Now, there was only like 3 or 4 that I was like scrambling to find something somewhere to say because literally there was nothing on the Grand Lodge site. And of course they had no website or anything else. So I had to do a bit of digging.
Yeah, well, luckily we've got most worshipful Alan Atkins that can
Yes.
that helps with that. That's a phone call away per se.
Yep. I think it'd be neat if the Grand Lodge made an effort now to go back and recontact the lodges, because some of those histories are at least 25 or more years old. I can talk about, we're getting ready to celebrate our 100th anniversary in 1992. So, well, that's good, but you're 125 now. Maybe it's time to update that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Because our stuff, I think our stuff's been on the Grand Lodge website, but there's not a whole lot to update. We've been around for 100, going on 172 years now. So.
Okay, everybody stand up. The master's in the lodge now. Worshipful Dennis, good to have you here. If you want to come off mute, Right Worshipful Dennis is our master of Virginia Research Lodge, only because we haven't had an annual yet. So he's supposed to have gone out of office in December. Good to have you here, Dennis.
Well, welcome, Worshipful.
Thanks, brothers. Good to be here with you.
You seem to be filing in. That's good. Oh, and our district deputy is here. So, Dennis, the plan then is we will meet in February and have an annual.
Well, that's the plan is to shoot for the normal stated in February, unless dictated by the Grand Lodge otherwise.
Okay. Right word from Mark Hohen. I want to recognize him. He is the district deputy for our research lodges. We did something different a couple of years ago. Most of y'all, I'm sure, have districts or some other organization for your lodges within your Grand Lodge. Can everybody mute who's not speaking, please? Or I'll just go ahead and do it. But what we did was the Grandmaster decided a couple of years back that we're going to have a district just for the 5 or 6 at the time research lodges, because they have unique needs, and certainly they don't need to comply with all the Grand Lodge regulations the way other lodges do in certain aspects. So it made sense to organize them differently, and they definitely had different needs and needed to be given different attention. So Mark's been our district deputy for 2 years running now, and trying to help the research lodges at least get in sync on at least a few ideas. So I think it's great. And he's made an effort to attend, so we appreciate him coming out.
Hey, Chris, thanks for setting this up, and looking forward to the presentation today.
Absolutely. And brethren, well, we mute you as you come in, so please, if you're not speaking, do mute yourself. We can mute you if we have to, but we want to avoid the background chatter. And certainly when our speaker is on, we all want to be muted out of respect. It's not even 10 o'clock yet. I'm glad I opened this early. We do have people coming in early. I mentioned to Brian last week, as I asked him when he opens the Zoom meeting an hour early, because as he says, some brothers can't tell time. So he wanted to make sure people caught it. And it is pretty neat. We do have quite a few brothers from Canada and from the UK on today, which is great. So we have to respect different time zones. It's 3 p.m. in England right now. And we see we're not even at 10 o'clock. We're already at 18 participants. So it's a good idea to open up early, let everybody come in and get settled before we start. So I'll just keep chattering as more brothers come in. This is yet another Zoom meeting for Virginia Research Lodge, number 1777, based out of Highland Springs, Virginia, operating out of our Southern Command in Virginia Beach, run by yours truly. And I want to welcome everybody who's joined us from all over the place. We are recording this meeting. It will be posted on YouTube, hopefully within a week. I've been pretty good about getting them up there on YouTube if you ought to go back and watch previous ones. And our speaker today is Brother Worshipful. What are you, Rodney? And what's your say your full name, because I can't pronounce that last name.
Brother Rodney McGillvary, and I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I attend the Soul D Bayless number 359 Lodge. That Brother Dave Thomas from Wendy's fame was
Oh,
a member of our lodge, and his birthday was yesterday. So
excellent.
yeah,
And
it's a pleasure to be here. This is the first research lodge meeting I've attended. So
excellent. Okay. Well, we'll be calling on you in a few minutes. We don't have a real strict format yet. I'm still kind of sorting that out. I want to give everybody a chance to come in and say hi if anybody's got anything, and a little chit chat for a bit, but we'll get into your talk in a few. We don't have any business to conduct because this is not a stated meeting by any sense. Some here in Virginia have expressed concern that we're meeting online and trying to do lodge business, whatever. So we're not doing that. This is just a Zoom meeting. It's just to share Masonic education with any brother who is interested. And I love the fact we're getting more and more people attending. We seem to be growing in attendance. So that's a very cool thing. If any brother wants to say hello, pass on anything, feel free to go ahead and comment as I'm adding more people.
Brother, I just wanted to take a minute and thank you for taking the time this morning. Worshipful Dennis, thanks for, as always, with Virginia Research, taking the lead, and your officers, Chris. I think this is great, sending out the combined works papers from Virginia's research lodges. The goal of Freemasonry is to have brotherhood. And frankly, that's more important today than probably it was a year ago today, given what we've kind of been going through. So all the work you guys have been doing has been greatly appreciated. And hopefully it has made a difference in the lives of the brothers and the lodges that have chosen, English, right? That have chosen to take advantage of it. So I'm very appreciative of it as we head into 2021, and I'm look forward to being a part of as many of these as possible. And frankly, hopefully, we'll spread by word of mouth that there's a lot of value to them. So looking forward to today's presentation, and I'll shut up.
Well said. And I've posted, if you are not a member of Virginia Research Lodge's Facebook group, any Mason is certainly welcome to join us. I just posted a link in the chat. And if you have any URLs you want to post for your lodge website or Facebook, whatever, please add them to the chat. I will be publishing those. I did figure out how to save them. So I think they're set up to automatically save, but just to be sure, I'll double save it myself before I leave. But we welcome anybody want to post about your group and welcome people to attend there. We have a weekly research paper that I put together that pulls research papers from our 5 research lodges and sometimes other sources. That goes out every week. We have over 1,000 people on that list now. So if you just go to our Facebook group, there's links on there to join. Basically, just message me. So if you go to our Facebook group and you see me, just click on my picture and message me to be added. You do have to message me in order to be added. Just joining the group doesn't put you on the mailing list. Because I have people complaining they aren't getting it. It's like, well, you never signed up. So, but that's been a lot of fun. We've been doing that 2 years now. I'm into the 1990s now, and still have plenty more that I'm scanning and putting online. But that's been a lot of fun putting those papers together. And you can, of course, find their links to go see previous ones that have been posted. So we got about 100 of them on our website now. Any other brother have any comments? Want to say hello? Introduce yourself? Please go ahead.
Hello, brother. This is Fernand Douglas. I am from Farmington Lodge number 151 from the Grand Lodge of Michigan, and I'm excited. I finally get to catch one of these. It was a perfect storm. Wife and kids went away.
Very good.
Happy to be here.
That's great. Glad to have you here, brother. I know what it is. I have to obligate myself to every Saturday at 10 being available for these. And that seems to work well for me. And I feel like, unfortunately, I'm the linchpin. I'm the choke point in this. If I'm not scheduling these, they aren't happening. And I was late for one and they didn't get to start. So I have to make sure I'm available at a minimum to be at these things. And 10 o'clock does seem to work for us. That's when our normal lodge would be meeting in Richmond on the 4 Saturdays a year when we meet. So it seemed like a good time to schedule them. Of course, we don't have to drive to Richmond to get there, so that's good. But it's convenient for our brothers in the UK because it's early afternoon, and even other brothers west of us here in the US. One brother complained that we started too early because he's on the West Coast. I said, well, I'm sorry, I can't accommodate everybody, but we may well plan one if people are interested, maybe a evening meeting one night to accommodate the brothers who are in China and Hong Kong and the Philippines who are on our mailing list who are interested in attending, but the time is just a little too late for them. So we may try other hours from time to time, but it seems like 10 o'clock is a good one to be our base. So, and we're always receptive to opinions. Feel free to post on the page if you like to suggest a different time that might be better if you're in a different time zone or something. So we want to try to make this available to as many brothers as possible. So any other brother want to say hello?
I was just going to jump in before Christopher and say hello from England. I'm from Liverpool. My name's Liam Haywood, and I'm University Lodge of Liverpool. So it's really nice to be here and a pleasure to be on. So thank you very much for having me on today. You're absolutely right, Christopher. 3 o'clock is quite a convenient time. Usually I'm not available on Saturdays, so we're very lucky today to get on. And actually 3 o'clock in the UK is when all of the football or the soccer starts. So that's usually a time that I'm unavailable as well. So as I'm sitting here, I'm watching the scores as well.
Okay.
Look forward to the talk, and thank you for having me today.
Indeed. Right, Worshipful Dennis, you have any announcements or anything on behalf of the Research Lodge?
No, I do not, right, Worshipful, other than just maintaining situational awareness from the Grand Lodge and wait for the end of this month to see what we're going to do moving forward.
So is it an option, I'll ask Right Worshipful Mark, is it an option for the Lodge to open a meeting with 10, assuming we're still stuck at 10 members, come up and open a meeting and then go to recess, do an online meeting for anyone who wants to attend just like this, and then close again and close our Lodge meeting? Would that be permissible?
Yeah, Chris, that's a good question. It's something that the Grand Lodge is looking at for we'll just say for January. They decided not to go that route. And clearly they're working through the logistics that is more appropriate to a Blue Lodge, right? Because there's a lot more that goes on there that that somebody could make a mistake with that should not be on the internet and all that. There was a message sent out by the Grand Master, which I gave to each of the Research Lodges masters and secretaries, where that exact scenario was discussed. So they're moving a little bit slower because, of course, whatever they do, they're going to have to figure out what they say to all of the craft lodges first, right? Because that's the place where somebody could start something, could do exactly what you said, and then while they're online, they could do something that really shouldn't be made public. So they're trying to make sure they've got their hands around that before they make a final decision. Although, frankly, I agree with you. We are doing, substantively the research of this meeting and presenting a paper or a talk or things like that is the substantive work of a research lodge. And it would be a lot easier for us to kind of bifurcate a meeting from a presentation. But so let me just go back to the beginning, summing up. that is something that the Grand Lodge has looked at for the month of January. They kind of said, hey, please hold on a second. Not sure we're ready to go that far yet, but clearly their mind is in what would that mean for a craft lodge? And frankly, want to give them just a little bit of time, because in spite of the fact that this has been going on now for 10 months, some of these solution sets really are relatively new. Like lodges really are getting into, or I shouldn't say that, people are getting into and used to Zoom or any of the normal meeting platforms. And so people are now starting to get comfortable with, well, how could we do that kind of engagement with other brothers? So
right.
If this looks like it's going to drag on and on, which, I hope that it will not. I hope that we will start to see over the next month to 2 months, an improvement that would allow us to progress towards a more normal lodge posture. But it's great. It's a great point, and it is actually one that the Grand Master himself specifically addressed in an email. I think it was a week and a half. It was right around the New Year's or right after. So
well, I brought it up, and I did see that email. The Royal Arch chapters have been given permission to do exactly that, to actually bring in no more than 10 brothers, open up a chapter, because I think you only need 9 to open. So just bringing the officers to open and then go to recess, bringing everybody else, put up a camera or something and have a Zoom meeting there at the chapter room. And then at the end, they can actually discuss, they're given permission by the Grand Chapter to discuss business and get the consensus of the brothers present, and secretary makes note of it, and then close the Zoom meeting, go back to labor, open the chapter again and vote based on what people said during the meeting, and then close business. So they actually found a way to conduct business. I'm not suggesting that, but really a research lodge doesn't conduct much business. But if we're not encouraged to go to recess, then I could say we could go hold a regular meeting to at least do the annual business, do the installation, and just limit it to however many members we're allowed to have. And then right after that, set up for a Zoom meeting and host a Zoom meeting from the lodge room outside of the lodge meeting, because that would certainly, since this is in compliance, I would say that would be in compliance, because we're not trying to sandwich it in within the confines of an actual meeting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes forward. And frankly, the Grand Chapter's efforts may kind of show a viable way forward to the Grand Lodge.
Yep.
Right? Because once you show somebody a successful way of doing things, maybe it will be, I don't want to say the fear factor, but clearly there are concerns. We don't want to make mistakes, and we'll go from there.
Right, worshipful sirs, if I may, being a high priest of our local Royal Arch chapter here, most excellent Cohen has actually laid out rules for that, to where if we do not have the proper number to open, we are allowed to use the Zoom participants to get our number to open. He's set up special opening protocols, whether we open and then go live, or whether we just have to go live with special opening protocols. But I think the Grand Chapter is leading the way. I'm very fortunate that a very close friend of mine and a brother at my lodge is part of that internet security meeting that's working with the Grand Lodge on setting up the protocols for the Zoom situation. It's closing the door for reading petitions and stuff like that they're really hung up on right now. But oddly enough, the Grand Chapter is said it's okay to vote on petitions during a Royal Arch meeting that is on Zoom. So I think they're leading the way, adapting to the times, if you will.
And that's interesting. We had a Virginia Research chapter met just 2 weeks ago, I think, and we had it in our normal time. And I'll put that out there, that there are other bodies that meet at this time on Saturdays. So as we go forward, it's my intent that when A. Douglas Smith meets, when the research chapter meets, when some other research body is meeting, we won't be hosting, but I'll encourage everybody to go attend that meeting instead. So 10 o'clock is set aside for us, and we'll set that aside if anybody else is meeting so we can support them. But the research chapter actually opened in the Zoom meeting in a much the sense you'd be me like here saying, I officially declare this lodge open, boom, with no ritual or anything. But they actually conducted business. They had a secretary report and everything. So Grand Chapter is allowing them to do it. I'm not trying to do anything of that kind here. I'm just pointing out that for the chapter, they were allowed to more or less have a meeting online, a literal read business. I think they can actually vote on petition. They did vote on certain things by show of hands and what have you. So that is some new ground. And right, Worship Mark, I'm not trying to break new ground here. Don't worry. I'm staying within the limits of what I consider to be a Zoom meeting. This is open to anybody. I certainly can't check anybody's dues cards. I'm assuming everybody here is a Mason. I'm taking you at your word, and we're not going to discuss anything here that I couldn't post on the Facebook page or put in our emails or on our website. So I'm well within the rules of secrecy and what I'll do in that.
And I will just add one more thing. You know, the Grand Chapter of Virginia has went as far as to set up its own Zoom account that any chapter can use at the will and pleasure of the high priest to go through the Grand Chapter's Zoom account.
Excellent. Any other comments on that topic? Feel free to speak up, brothers.
DC Shanks is going to have their first one Monday, the 19th, and I'm going to see how that goes. But much like you say with your chapter research lodge, basically all I have to do is declare it open if I have to use the number of participants as the minimum number required. So we'll see how it goes. I'm embracing the technology, and I think we have to move forward as a craft, especially with what's laid out before us.
Indeed. Well, again, I'm grateful for everyone. I think some people have joined since I started talking here. So we're up to 27, and that's great. I want to welcome everyone. If you didn't hear me earlier, this is Virginia Research Lodge 1777 hosting our weekly Zoom meeting. Hopefully we'll continue to host a weekly Zoom meeting at this time. I'm going to introduce our speaker in a minute. I did want to, what's funny is we have very few members of our lodge here. We have the worship master, which is good. I want to welcome Brother John London, who as always is on his phone. Good to have you, brother. I don't hear you, John. You're unmuted, but I don't hear you. Okay, well, I'm glad you're here, John. I'm sorry we couldn't hear you. You want to try your connection. I believe he's on his phone. He does make an effort to attend. He's our marshal. John was marshal when I joined, I think, and I think he's always been marshal. He does a great job, so we keep him there. All right, if there's nothing else, I'm gonna go ahead and mute. I think everybody's muted. Yep. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker. This is Brother Rodney McGillvary. Is that close enough? McGillvary?
It's McGillvary, very close.
Okay, and go ahead and introduce yourself to what lodge you're from, and please proceed with your talk.
All right, thank you, Christopher. My name is Rodney McGillvary. I'm from the Blue Lodge, Soldi Bayless, and number 359 in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And this is my first meeting at a research lodge, so I'm proud to be here, pleased to be here, and thanks for having me. Hopefully everybody's having a great Saturday morning. It's going to be a busy one for me. After here, I got to jump on the Indiana's Grand Masters page, and today is Founders Day for Indiana, so it's going to be a exciting, busy day here for us brethren in Indiana. So without further ado, I have a background in alchemy and esoteric philosophy pretty much most of my life. And prior to joining Freemasonry, I was a member of other orders, specifically alchemical orders. And I was a member of an order in New Zealand called the Herodom Order. And since then, that order has been defunct and non-existent. And I decided to carry on the tradition and tie it into Freemasonry. And I've noticed a lot of alchemical symbolism throughout my journey of Freemasonry. and I decided to write a paper regarding the acacia plant. I've done a lot of research and experiments in using plants, using alchemical formula, and I've come across the acacia through my research, and there's a lot of alchemical symbolism that ties into the Master Mason degree. So I titled this paper that I wrote recently, The Death and Resurrection Show. And upon being put to death by the setting ball in the Master Mason degree, the then startled brother gets carried away to his grave. He is unaware that the sprig of acacia was placed at his head, as well as the meaning behind it. After attentively listening to the preceding drama being played out and his body being strictly searched by the fellow craft, he was then taken by the lion's paw and risen from the grave. He was thus born again into the life of a new Master Mason, and afterward given a historical lecture. This lecture introduced the newly raised Master Mason to the rich symbolism of the fraternity, including the many esoteric emblems. This is where our brother first learns about the sprig of acacia. The sprig of acacia is described to us in the Master Mason degree as an emblem of immortality. It is a sign that gives us hope that we shall live beyond the grave and that our rough ashlar will be resurrected into the perfect stone, completing our work. This is also very similar to the great work of alchemy, which I've been used to prior to being raised a Master Mason. The objective of Freemasonry, making good men better, I consider an alchemical formula. This motto, it alludes to transmutation, which our goal is to, at the end, transmute mankind, which I think is a very important goal to have right now, considering our world is in complete chaos. I think Freemasonry is more important than ever. The great work or magnum opus of the alchemist is the process of transmuting the prima materia, or first matter, into the philosopher's stone. The operative alchemist does this through physical lab work, and the speculative alchemist does this through the study of esoteric philosophy and self-transmutation. The common thought of what alchemy is the transmuting of base metals into gold, but in most esoteric circles, this is not the goal of the alchemist. Esoterically, the goal is true enlightenment or transmutation of the self. Physical lab experiments are only reflections of the spiritual lab within, and vice versa. In Freemasonry, we are taught that we start out in life as rough ashlar, and through the trials and tribulations of life, and with the use of the common gavel to divest our hearts and minds and consciences of all the vices and superfluities of life, thereby fitting our minds as living stone for that spiritual building, that house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. This is an alchemical transmutation that we first find in the entered apprentice degree, and it continues through the Master Mason degree as we become Hiram Abiff and resurrect into eternal life. This great work is completed through a continuous process of separating and recombining of the prima materia, or the Latin maxim, solve et coagula. The ancient alchemists and philosophers believed that the prima materia consists of three principal elements. These elements are mercury, sulfur, and salt, or spirit, soul, and body. These alchemists believed every living thing could be broken down into these three principal elements. Mercury epitomizes the spirit and represents imagination, moral judgment, and the higher mental faculties. Sulfur embodies the soul and represents one's emotions and desires. Salt then represents the physical body. Both operative and speculative alchemists separate the prima materia into three different kingdoms: the mineral, animal, and plant kingdoms. Each kingdom can be broken down into their individual principal element of mercury, sulfur, and salt. And my experience as an alchemist has been primarily dealing with the plant kingdom. Through the alchemical process called spagyrics, the operative alchemist can prepare herbs into a more potent form. In the plant kingdom, the sulfur is the essential oil of the plant, the mercury is the alcohol fermented from the plant, and the salt is the mineral body that is derived from the plant dead body. The basic spagyric process consists of alcohol extraction, mineral extraction, and then recombination of the plant body and the fluids that are macerated prior to that. The ethanol alcohol can be extracted from grape wine by distilling it using a distillation train. This distillation train consists of 2 large flasks, a condenser tube, and a heat source. The wine is heated up at a temperature which the alcohol is evaporated from the water in the wine within the first large flask. The vapor of the alcohol then travels up through the condenser tube and precipitates as pure ethanol alcohol within the second larger flask. The plant matter is then added to the ethanol alcohol to macerate for 40 days. After the 40-day maceration, the plant matter is strained, separating the mercury sulfur tincture and the dead plant matter. Or this is what the alchemists call the terra damnata, or the damned earth. The mercury and sulfur then rest in the flask while the salt is prepared. The salt of the plant is now processed through calcination. This is done by putting the plant matter into a cauldron, then setting it on a heat source. This process of calcination will go through 3 different stages. The plant matter will burn first into a gray ash, then a black ash, and finally the white salts. And these salts will be purified through further distillation and purification until it reaches a spiritually elevated state, where I personally have seen them float right above the bottom of the flask. The final stage of the spagyric process is to combine the salt with the tincture of mercury and sulfur that was previously prepared before calcination. This process spiritually raises the plant to its fullest potential. And if one reflects upon this process upon one's own self, then we realize we can raise ourselves spiritually to our highest potential. It's what Hermes said back in Greek, or the Greek times of mythology, the as above, as below principle, and as within, as without. And I have delved into alchemy for years prior to being raised a master mason. And when I was raised, it caught my attention when I heard about the acacia plant being one of the esoteric emblems of Freemasonry. During my alchemical studies, I have researched many plants for their intrinsic value and worth. One plant in particular happened to be the acacia plant. The acacia plant has very deep roots, which is needed for it to survive in the dry climate of Jerusalem, where our Grand Master Hiram Abiff was said to be buried. This plant's ability to thrive in an arid land, as well as its hardness and durability, gave reason for the Hebrews and Egyptians to consider it a symbol of immortality. And immortality seems to be the main representation of the acacia plant. In the book of Exodus in the Bible, it is written that God instructed Moses to tell his people to bring an offering of acacia wood to be used for the construction of the tabernacle. And due to the durability and hardness of the acacia wood, it was perfect to be utilized in the building of the tabernacle structure, as well as the furniture, and most importantly, the Ark of the Covenant. One biblical researcher has noted this wood is resistant to decay because the tree deposits in the heartwood many waste substances, which are preservatives and render the wood unpalatable to insects, making the wood dense and difficult to penetrate by water and other decaying agents. The acacia wood seems to take on the essence of immortality itself. And I think that that's one reason God told Moses to use that wood for the tabernacle. And in our fraternity, the sprig of acacia is a symbol of immortality. The sprig of acacia was placed at the head of the grave of our Grand Master Hiram Abiff. This was to mark the site in case the ruffians needed to return. Interesting enough, the custom of marking a grave with the sprig of acacia was an ancient one that was practiced by the ancient Hebrews to mark the gravesite of a friend that had passed away. And within the Assyrian myth in Egypt, it was revealed that the acacia trees grew and flourished around the grave of Osiris, and the roots of the trees absorbed the spirit of the god Osiris. It has been said that the ancient Egyptians would then extract the blood of Osiris near his gravesite. This was later done in ancient Christian practices with the blood of Christ and the taking of communion. Upon further research regarding the acacia and the process of death and resurrection, I came across the discovery that the acacia plant contains the psychoactive alkaloid DMT. This alludes to the Egyptians extracting DMT for various practices within the Osirian mysteries. This practice of using DMT for religious purposes and didn't only happen in Egypt. I have found out that many indigenous tribes around the world, as well as the ancient Aboriginal tribes of Australia, have used the acacia plant for its DMT for their initiation rituals. And it would seem to me that the path of initiation of the world's ancient cultures, as well as most mainstream religions, is a path of transition from adolescence to adulthood, and then adulthood to finally immortality, or from birth to death and finally rebirth, which is seen in our Master Mason degree. And most of these cultures reside in an area where the acacia plant grows naturally and is used to aid in the transition from birth to death and finally rebirth. Researchers have proposed that the pineal gland in the human brain excretes this same DMT upon birth, death, and upon dreaming. The pineal gland is portrayed by the ancients in their hieroglyphs as the pine cone in reference to the gods passing on knowledge to mankind. And if you look at an X-ray of the pineal gland in the brain, it looks like a pine cone itself. And it's interesting that the spring of evergreen, in which the tree bears pine cones, is presented during the Master Mason or the Masonic funeral services that we have witnessed throughout our time in Masonry as an emblem of the immortal soul. The world is connected through the processes of life and death, and we can see the process represented within and without ourselves. And from the dawn of man to our current age, we can still see the same path of initiation being taught, even if unrecognized. Our reality can be summed up as the death and resurrection show. And through the acacia plant, we can always find hope. And that, my brother, ends my paper regarding the immortality of the acacia plant and the death and resurrection symbolism therein. Thank you, brethren, and thanks for having me, Christopher.
Excellent. Excellent. I really enjoyed that. Had a couple questions. Any other brother have questions? I'll go and ask my question. Any brother can ask one after me then. Briefly, what is the difference between alchemy and chemistry?
Well, alchemy, as most people realize, is the precursor to chemistry.
Okay.
And it's an ancient art that came from Egypt. And then it got more externalized through the usage of various chemicals, because alchemy is just a general term for transmutation, transmuting one thing into another. Chemistry delves into multiple facets of doing things with different chemicals and whatnot.
Okay. And you mentioned that in the process of I forget what the term you used. You talked about esoteric or basically speculative alchemy as opposed to, I guess, operative alchemy, whatever I forget what you used.
Yeah, no, you're correct.
Okay. In operative alchemy, you help a plant reach its highest potential. What exactly does that mean? And I mean, from a practical standpoint, once you've completed the process, and I appreciate you explaining how that works, and I followed how you did that, what is the plant's highest potential, and what are you doing with what you've made after you've done the transmutation?
Well, the original characterization of the plant itself has the same aspects of the final product or the final spiritually elevated plant, but it's at a lower frequency. It resonates at a lower frequency, and you can see this through plant medicine. If you take a plant and make a tea out of it, its characteristics aren't as fully there as if you took a plant tincture. You can just tell by just experimenting with plant medicines and various tinctures that they are more potent, so to speak, than the plant itself at its original form.
Okay. So you can actually use it as a medicine. You brought out the attributes of the plant into a medicine that's more effective than just say consuming the plant in its raw form.
Exactly. And
Excellent.
that's one of the main reasons that I delved into plant alchemy, was to create my own personal medicines here at my home.
Okay.
Just because I don't really trust mainstream pharmaceuticals. So you can pretty much create similar remedies using plants.
And you've noticed it works for you. You've noticed a difference in creating your own medicines.
Like I recently started using using the alchemical process to extract the essence of the ashwagandha plant or root. And I researched through different manuals that I have regarding the characteristics of different plants. And the ashwagandha plant gives you a lot more vitality and energy. And since I've been taking tincture that I created, I've noticed that within myself. I've been very energetic. Well, I drink a lot of coffee too. That probably adds to it. But without the coffee, I've noticed I have a lot more lifeblood, so to speak.
Excellent. Okay. Very good. This is any other questions any brother has about the paper?
Hi, brother. I have a question.
No.
So, as far as the Acacia forming, I believe you called it DMT.
Yes.
What is that? I've heard about that on other podcasts and things like that. What is the effects of that? A, B, if it is it legal? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the DMT was used in various cultures and ancient tribes across the world through their initiation process. It would help them prepare for the initiation, and in its essence, it would give the candidate a hallucinogenic experience so they can be more focused on the initiation at hand and be more attuned to the ancient spirits that the ancient cultures would be in communication with. DMT has been known to be released in the human brain upon dreaming, and that dreaming itself seems like in a hallucinogenic state, and upon birth and upon death as well. So it just seems like it helps prepare the candidate to be in tune with the various spirits that these ancient cultures were in communication with. And since it's been known to be released upon death, it seems like it helps prepare the human for death as well. And I think that's one of the main reasons it's being used as an esoteric emblem of our Master Mason degree, because that degree is just about death and rebirth symbolism. And to get to your question number 2, it is illegal to delve in DMT here in America. A lot of people have listed it as a legal substance, which I personally do not do, and I do not agree with at all. It's too dangerous. I answered your question, brother.
Oh,
Chris,
yes,
can
I
you
appreciate
mute everyone else, please?
I think, yeah, everybody's muted except the speaker, and yeah, I got everybody muted except me and Rodney and the other brother Douglas Ferdinand, who just spoke up. So everyone else is muted. Did you have something to say, Dennis?
Yep, nope, that was it. It was just hard to hear.
Okay.
With the background noise.
Well, there may be some coming from my house. My dog and my pig are both roaming around in the background behind me, so they're making probably some footsteps. I'm sorry. I have very effective headphones. By the way, this is an endorsement. Skull Candy headphones. I wear these for my online meetings for work. They could hear my wife's phone ringing in the other room with the Star Wars theme, and someone accused me of watching a movie during our staff meeting. I said, it's just a phone and it's 2 rooms away. So apparently I have a very good microphone in my cheap $15 Skull Candy headphones. So I would definitely recommend these. So I apologize if it was my background noise that you were hearing. Any other brother have any comments or questions for our speaker? All right. I did want to say this. As someone who's been a Mason 30 years and seen the research lodge as being the next step that most Masons never get to, I mean, and Mark can certainly attest to this as well, most Masons join a lodge. They only meet the Masons in that lodge. They don't even make the effort to attend other lodges in their own district or city, much less other cities within their Grand Lodge, and much less go to another country or talk to people elsewhere in the world. But most Masons' view of Masonry, I found, is it's very small. It's very localized to just the lodge that they attend all the time. They join the lodge closest to their house, or the lodge that their friend belonged to, so they join that lodge. They don't even make an effort to visit, and their entire view of Masonry is focused around their impression of Masonry is that lodge that they joined, and that's it. Now, there are a few of us who go out and visit other lodges and get a bigger perspective. I think a Mason who makes the effort to attend a research lodge expands his perspective even more. And Masons who join the other appendant bodies learn more. There's more degrees, there's more information, and you expand your knowledge. And the more you expand your knowledge in Masonry, the more and more that's available for you to learn. And you realize how little you learned before you took that next step. But even so, even if you get all the degrees that you can, Scottish Rite and New York Rite, it seems like a lot of Masonry is just on the surface, you know? And the research lodges, some of the papers I've been reading, attempt to delve more into it. There's more meaning. And I think most of us join Masonry looking for a deeper meaning. And I hear talk of alchemy. We mentioned the Kabbalah in the Scottish Rite. And I think other than Masons simply learning the ritual and repeating it, we're not delving into the deeper mysteries. We're supposed to be transforming ourselves. And just going through the degrees alone isn't really transformational enough. And so I think this is kind of exciting that Brother Rodney brought in an aspect that I don't hear much about in Masonry. And I think it's an opportunity to learn there's more going on here. And so many of us are just scratching the surface. I keep thinking of Plato's cave, where people are looking at the wall and they see the pictures on the wall and they don't see reality, which is on the other side. So this is really cool. So I'm hoping this opens the door and more deeper discussions about Masonry. People talk about esoteric Masonry all the time. It's like, well, really, what is that? Where are we going with this? Are we really learning something? So if we're just taking our first steps into something that's deeper, I think that's really kind of exciting. Looking forward to learning more from these meetings and kind of growing as a Mason here. This is what we're about, is this sort of discussion. And sadly, this is the exception. What we have going on right here is the exception, not the norm in Masonry. And whatever small part I can help in bringing us to a deeper understanding, that I'm glad to be a small part in that effort. Any other brother have anything else to offer?
I would add, my name's
Go ahead.
Lyle Piper.
Please introduce yourself. We have time. Introduce yourself, Lyle.
Sure. My name's Lyle Piper. I was raised in Equity 131 in Janesville, Iowa. As a young man, I moved to Washington, D.C. to go to college, and then moved to Arlington, Virginia. Subsequently, my parents moved to Shenandoah Valley. My father joined, affiliated with Strasbourg 98. I found a very interesting through the years. When I moved to DC, I found a home through DeMolay. I was very involved in Iowa DeMolay. I found a home there. I was accepted because of my DeMolay connection, also into the lodge as well. Side note, I was raised at 18. DC was 21. I went to a 21-year-old's first degree and was introduced afterward as still the youngest Mason in the room. When my father and parents moved to Strasbourg, I was very accepted into the Strasbourg Lodge, and I affiliated with Spermont as well, because I really appreciated the home that provided for both my father and myself. But I was also very impressed in Virginia. It seems like they have a very big tradition of traveling to other lodges, visiting other lodges, at least within the district. My father was a district education officer for a couple of years, and I got to go to some other lodges, and every time I went to one lodge, there was 4 or 5 visitors from other lodges, and that did impress me. There are folks who are spreading it out. I don't know if they're going to the deeper level that you subsequently talked about, but I would say that there is especially in Virginia, I find a real openness to meeting new people and moving around within the lodge. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother DeMolay. Good to have you on here. It was DeMolay that brought me to Masonry. I joined it.
Well, it was Masonry that brought me to DeMolay.
Really?
When my father was raised, his father was in the East, his brother was in the South, and his uncle was in the West. My father raised me. So my family brought me to DeMolay, or my Masonry brought me to DeMolay, and then continued my growth along those lines.
Excellent. I joined DeMolay in Seattle. I knew nothing about Freemasonry. A couple of friends of mine were in DeMolay, and they asked me to join. And when I got in, I immediately realized this is exactly where I wanted to be with my life. And some people don't like this term, but I refer to DeMolay as watered down Masonry, because the ritual was written by Masons to put it in a simpler format for younger men to accept. And I still look at it as watered down Masonry. It teaches some of the same principles, but puts it in a more accessible form, I guess. And I knew it's like, well, this is watered down. I want the real deal as soon as I can. So I was stationed here in Virginia, and I joined the lodge as soon as I turned 21. And both of my signers were advisors of my DeMolay chapter. And so I made an effort to support DeMolay along the way. I just got back involved again because my son, when he turned 13, joined a DeMolay chapter. So I became an advisor again after a 10-year break from that. So I've always supported our youth groups because I know what a difference they make. But I definitely, I know DeMolay is what took me to Masonry. I was the first one in my family who had anything to do with Masonry. So the trend's going to start with me, hopefully. And, 50 years from now, they'll talk about, well, Grandpa Chris, and, him getting all of us into Masonry, hopefully.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Brother Gary, go right ahead.
Yes. I just had to follow Brother Lyle. I am also a member of the lodge that he joined, Equity 131 in Janesville. I am the junior Grand Steward of the Grand Lodge of Iowa this year. And his dad mentored me in my early days of Masonry. And his dad, David, was my high school science teacher. So that's how I got, but my dad and my granddad were also Masons. So I have a long history of Masonry and DeMolay, and I'm past master of the DeMolay chapter here in Cedar Falls. So his dad wanted years ago the floor cloth that we used when some people in Virginia maybe don't know in the second degree what the floor cloth is, but it's the 3, 5, and 7 steps. And Lyle's dad, David, called me up one day and said, do we still have that old floor cloth around? Because he wanted us to send it to Virginia so he could show the Virginia people that floor cloth. It was ripped and tore, and he put a backing on it And my understanding, Lyle, is it correct that they used it to some degree there?
They did. They did. Sadly, I believe it was lost in the fire. Strasbourg, Spermont had a fire a few years ago, and I believe it was lost in the fire. But they did use it. They were kind of very surprised and pleased to have it.
Yeah. So.
Excellent. There are lodges, Brother Gary, in Virginia that use a cloth for the steps. And we had one, actually, our very talented worshipful master this year, who was mastered 10 years ago. He's actually the first retread we ever had in Ocean View. We've never repeated a master in 99 years. But for our 100th anniversary, we wanted to pick a master who was experienced enough to actually lead through all the things we're doing now. Unfortunately, we haven't done everything we want to do for our centennial because of COVID, but we're still doing our best to celebrate our anniversary. He's a talented artist who paints murals on buildings, and he's well known in the Virginia area. He's traveled to other states to actually paint murals, but he's a very talented artist, and he produced his own version of the steps on a very secure kind of plastic material, so it will last. But that's what we've been using for our second degree lecture, and I like using it. I've gone back and forth on it because there's some debate about, when should you point? Should you go over the steps and then turn around and all that? But that's more of a logistics thing for those of us who give the lecture. But yes, I know exactly what you're meaning with those floor. I forget what we call it. We have a term for a carpet or something. I think we call it the carpet.
Brothers, I'd just like to say hello to everybody. I'm Raymond Frankel from Western Massachusetts. And I have to say, really enjoyed this. As far as DMLA goes, we're working hard in Western Mass to resurrect DMLA and get new chapters going. I think that's going to certainly help the future of Masonry. And this country needs what the teachings are. That's for sure.
Excellent.
So, alchemy and chemistry is kind of astronomy and astrology. They used to be the same thing, and they've kind of separated somewhat with modern science, and the same thing with alchemy and chemistry. I really enjoyed this. I've heard a lot about alchemy this week on some of the AMD meetings I've been attending, and so forth. But I just wanted to say hello to everybody. Fraternal greetings from Massachusetts. I am now virtually headed to Missouri for the Southern Jurisdiction Scottish Rite degrees. I've seen all the Northern jurisdiction degrees, and now I'm joining Missouri for the Southern Jurisdiction degrees. I'm really enjoying it.
Interesting.
So thank you very much, brothers. You have a great day, and God be with all of you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Raymond. Appreciate that. Any other brother have anything to offer? You're more than welcome to introduce yourself if you haven't already. Feel free.
John London.
Hey, there you are, John.
Sorry, but I managed to get it to transition over to the phone. I was actually on the computer the first time around, and apparently the microphone cut out.
Okay.
So phone is a lot more reliable.
Okay. Well, glad to have you here. All right. Well, I'm trying to keep this moving along, so if no other brothers.
If I may interject,
go ahead, Joe, please.
Worshipful.
Please.
As being a DMLA sponsor, and of course, I've had the pleasure of sitting in lodge many years with Most Worshipful Kerry Campbell, which those in the state of Virginia knows that he really spearheaded the DMLA project. If anybody has not had the chance to see their flower presentation, we do it as a tradition for Mother's Day at Taylor Lodge. Invite your local chapter. It's very powerful, very moving, and it's enjoyed everywhere.
Absolutely. All three of the youth groups have public presentations that they can do, and the De Malay flower talk is definitely one of them, as well as the ceremonial light. My lodge had a tradition of having a youth meeting every year. We would bring in the youth groups, and we don't always have like all. I think one time we actually had all three give a presentation. It was rather long, so we decided just to let one give one each year, just as an introduction. But it's something for Masons who don't know much about our youth groups. It gives them a chance to see what the youth groups are doing and the value they offer. Of course, for a lot of us, we've all been involved for years and years with all the youth groups. We know very well exactly what's going on, but we want to make sure that some of our brothers who may not be familiar with it, who haven't spent time with the youth, get a chance to experience it. But their ritual is truly beautiful. All three of them have a lot to offer.
Yeah, we always have the De Malay, the Job's Daughters, and we will also have a presentation of the OES that comes in. You know, we try to support our appendant bodies because, you know, well, without them, we're not necessarily complete, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. It definitely offers more. There's more to learn from our appendant bodies. Definitely, I've always enjoyed being in the Scottish Rite, being the Royal Arch. It's interesting. If any of y'all are familiar with is everyone here familiar with what we call the traditional observance movement, the traditional observance lodges? Y'all have heard of them? There is a fella in Northern Virginia, in Arlington, I think it was, Hammer. I forget his first name. Andrew Hammer, I think it was. He was master of his lodge in Alexander, Washington, number 22, and he wanted to make an effort to make that lodge more of a traditional observance lodge. And I'll sum it up. He wrote a book called Observing the Craft, which I had the pleasure of reading recently, and it's kind of eye-opening. It's kind of this kind of stuff I've been talking about, where Masonry is supposed to be more than what it currently is. It's not meant to be just a social club. It's meant to be more intense, is one way to put it, more meaningful and more serious. And he outlines quite a few very controversial positions in this book. And he ran afoul of the Grand Lodge. He ended up leaving Virginia Masonry, and he only operates in DC now. But the traditional observance, they believe in the having the chamber of reflection, which is basically you set up a room, the anteroom before the candidate comes in, where there are symbols of death. There's a skull, there's candles, there's black drapings on the walls, whatever you do. But essentially the candidate is made to sit there for a period of time alone with his own thoughts before he receives, I'm not sure if it's just the EA degree or all 3 degrees perhaps. They use incense, they use music. They're very, very strict on ritual. There's no talking on the sidelines. There's no prompting. They believe in wearing tuxedos. They believe in dressing up. They believe you're going to have a meal. You're going to have a serious meal. You're going to shell out $20 each for a meal that's actually worth having, not just eating something fairly cheap on, served on cheap plastic plates or what have you. That Masonry is supposed to be at a higher level. And yes, it's more expensive. I think they raised their dues to like $300 per year. But the whole idea is, if Masonry wants to be taken more seriously, it needs to take itself more seriously and demand more of its members and offer more as well. I think we should probably have a talk one meeting about this and go into the details about it, because it's fascinating stuff, and you may not agree with everything he puts forth. Where I took exception was, in his view, there should not be appended bodies. If you're not learning everything about Masonry in the 3 degrees of the Blue Lodge, then that lodge isn't doing its job. And there's no need to have 29 degrees in the Scottish Rite and 6 degrees in the Royal Arch and then the Commandery and the Council and all. That Masonry is supposed to teach you all you need to know by the time you're a Master Mason. You've been taught all of the secrets, all of the meanings, and then you're supposed to run with that and delve deeper into it. And all these other degrees are a distraction. And he does have a point that those men who are active in the Scottish Rite and the other appendant bodies tend to become involved in them more and not come back to the Blue Lodge. So there's a point to that. But he also thinks we shouldn't have youth groups. We shouldn't have Eastern Star. It's all a distraction from the Blue Lodge, and you should find everything you're looking for in the Blue Lodge. I don't agree with that. That was Andrew Hammer's position. But he makes a valid argument in the book. He backs up why he says that quite effectively. I don't agree, and I could offer a counter argument, but I found it's one of those things where you read it, you're like, okay, I don't like this, but I hear what he's saying. And it makes you at least think. And we should be allowed to discuss things of controversy in Masonry because it makes you think. And even if you don't change your original position, I think you understand better why you believe what you do, why you think what you do, because you've read something that's a challenge. Whereas if everything you ever read and ever hear is exactly the same and everyone's saying the same exact thing, well, then you're like, okay, well, we're all in agreement. That's wonderful. But you haven't affirmed it. You accept it because that's what everybody else says. You know what I'm saying? And I think his book was good for me to read because it made me challenge what I believe about Masonry. And but I got a lot out of that. And I like this idea of the traditional observance in the sense of pushing Masonry to be more than just something that's casual. If we're just offering what you can get in the Lions Club or the Moose Lodge or, you know, the Kiwanis or the Rotary or just your local, you know, going to your local bar and hanging out with your buddies, and you complain to your buddies about everything in your social time with your buddies. If Masonry doesn't offer something more than all those other groups, then what is our point?
I'm glad you're bringing that up, Christopher, because I am actually currently helping some brethren here charter a traditional observance lodge here in Indiana. We're doing it up in Auburn, Indiana, and it's going to be a Scottish traditional observance lodge called the Lodge of St. Andrews.
Okay.
We're going to have the brethren either dress in kilts and the traditional or Scottish garb or the traditional English garb with the bowler hats and whatnot. And we're going to do exactly what you said. We're going to take it extremely serious. We're going to do it by the book. Everyone's going to have to memorize everything. And we're going to have very nice meals afterwards that you spoke of. And it's going to be superb fellowship. And it's bringing Freemasonry back to its traditional roots with the seriousness to it. So I'm glad you brought that up. And do you have any traditional observance lodge over there in Virginia right now?
Well, not formally. As I mentioned, Brother Hammer was attempting to take an existing lodge. I think it's Alexander Washington number 22, which meets at the George Washington National Masonic Memorial, which is a beautiful building, by the way, that he was attempting to turn that lodge into one. And not going to throw shade on our grand officers, but the Grand Master at the time was not happy with the changes he was making. And as I see it, now I'm trying to be objective in talking about this, in the Grand Master's view, and I don't agree with this in the slightest, Masonry should be cookie cutter. You should be able to go to any lodge anywhere in the state and have it look exactly the same and be exactly the same and act exactly, and all of them should be cookie cutter. And that any lodge that sets itself apart, even though it's completely voluntary, it's like, if you want to join this lodge, know that our dues are going to be 3 times what any other lodge pays, and tuxedos are mandatory for every meeting, not just the state, it's not just the annual, but every meeting, and that we are very strict. If you miss a meeting, you must write a letter to the lodge explaining your absence and so forth. All of the incense, the music, all of the trappings, I'm forgetting things, but all of the things, none of them, to my view, violate anything in the Methodical Digest. It is clearly spelled out in the Methodical Digest what a lodge may not do and what they must do in a meeting. And they comply with all of that, but they add something additional. So I think the Grand Master's opinion was, you're being too different from other lodges, and it's not fair to someone, I guess, who wants the same experience in any of the lodge they visit. You're too far outside the norm. We can't have that. And they ended up, I don't know all the details, but they made them basically, they drove Andrew Hammer to leave Virginia Masonry. I think he was a district deputy. He was a district instructor of work, and he was very much involved in Virginia Masonry, and he just said, forget it, and operates out of DC now. So he's still a Mason, fortunately, but it put such a bad taste in his mouth that he said, I'm not having this. They're stifling the creativity too much. And I agree that we should encourage lodges to be unique. I love Masonry in that every lodge I visit has its own flavor. It has its own personality. When I go visit, Norview Lodge, they're different enough from us, even though they're in our district. When I visit Atlantic, when I visit Princess Anne Lodge out at the beach, it's a different personality. It's still Masonry. It's all the same ritual and everything else, but the brothers there make it their own. And that's what's interesting about Masonry, and being able to have that. And I think trying to force us to be cookie cutter, I think, was a misstep on the part of the Grand Master. I'm not even sure which Grand Master it was, by the way.
Brother Christopher,
Please.
This is Chuck Reed.
Yes, sir.
I'm a member of Westgate number 738 here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area.
Yes.
And I'm also a member of Prometheus UD, which is a traditional observance lodge under dispensation in the state of North Carolina.
Excellent.
We are, I think, the third traditional observance lodge to be undergoing or have undergone chartering in the state. We had the support of our immediate past Grand Master, who helped establish a program in the state called the Middle Chamber Program. And the Middle Chamber Program is an educational program for Masons that want to delve into more esoteric branches of Masonry. And what you said is very important. I think in North Carolina, we recognized that we could not convert lodges. But if you wanted to start a traditional observance lodge and you had a core of brethren that were interested in doing that, that was probably the better choice. We have a large, diverse membership in the state. We have one of our lodges is composed of a lot of guys who like to ride motorcycles. Just to give you a little bit of the diversification. The point of Masonry is that traditional observance lodges are not for everybody, but there is a group of current Masons who desire more light in Masonry, and I think that they're seeking it through traditional means. And Rodney, I commend you for your efforts in assisting with that. Just wanted to point out that it's alive and active, but it's not a replacement. It is an adjunct to, and it's not for everybody. And I share your thoughts, Christopher. You hit it right on the head. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Chuck.
Brother Christopher, if I could
Yes,
jump in here.
please, Neil.
The discussion of observant Masonry. First of all, I'd like to thank Brother McGillvary for an interesting talk earlier. There's lots I've been to there. And the conversation about observant Masonry, I had the privilege 3 years ago of being the charter master of the second observant lodge formed here in Ontario. And our Grand Master, our current Grand Master is of that lodge with me, and our current Deputy Grand Master is a member of an observant lodge in Eastern Ontario. There's a lot of support for observant Masonry in Ontario. And I think the last 5 or 10 minute discussion here says to me that an opportunity here for you to dedicate a session to observant Masonry. And there you go.
And then taking notes.
Andrew Hammer is a good friend of mine, and he's a good friend of our lodge in Stratford. Really? He's difficult to get as a speaker because he doesn't like his, he won't allow his talks to be recorded.
Okay.
But we had him as a guest speaker 2 months ago at our lodge here in Ontario, where he and our Grand Master had a conversation about observant Masonry. And there's a lot of people who are qualified to talk about observant Masonry, but if you wanted, I have a half-hour talk that I could email you so you could read it, and I would be to present it on this forum sometime.
That would be awesome.
I think one of the interesting comments has come out is about who is interested in being a Mason, or who is going to benefit from being a Mason. And I like to say that not everybody is cut out to be a Mason. Not every Mason is cut out to be an observant Mason. But for every 10 men who come to Masonry or come to observant Masonry, they come for 15 different reasons. And because of that, it's important that we have a diversity of lodges within our jurisdictions. You talked about that, and other speakers have as well. A cookie cutter approach doesn't work because it doesn't feed everybody, right? And as Masons, we want to be able to feed everybody who's interested in our fraternity.
Agreed. Yes, I did. And it's funny because I did make a note. I would like, well, part of my, I'm trying to think of it. What I've drawn down on myself, because I committed myself, I've committed myself to doing these weekly papers, and that's not hard. The hard part is making time every week to actually scan the papers and read them and put them in digital form. But that's a commitment I've taken on, to have a paper every week. I took on the commitment last year of doing one lodge a day, and that was a commitment because I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but it was every single day I had to put 20 minutes into it and do a little bit of research. So that was a commitment, and I had to make myself just like, no, you got to do this every day. You committed. And I was very relieved when it was done, because for the rest of 2020, I could take it easy for November and December. It's like, oh, I don't have to do this every single day. This is great. I may get more papers done. But I'm committing myself right now to have a weekly Zoom meeting, unless someone else is having one and I want to let them have the floor. You know, the research chapter we did 2 weeks ago, A. Douglas Smith, and no one's here from A. Douglas Smith, I don't think, but their brother, Brother Hone had to drop out. He's a member of A. Douglas Smith, and they have theirs coming up, so I'll certainly defer to them if someone else has a meeting planned. But I've committed to putting together a meeting every Saturday for you, and I definitely have a good audience now. And I want to make sure I have a different speaker every week, because I can sit here and read a paper, but I really don't want to. I'm happy to fill in. I'm the backup if my speaker falls through, but I don't want to be the center of attention. I'm happy to be the host and get it going and let someone else like Brother Rodney come in and give a totally different talk and opinion on things. And that's what we want, is different views in here. So the more I can line up here going forward and have papers and meetings scheduled, the easier my life is. Because if I've got somebody booked, I can rest easy. Okay, well, I'm booked out 3, 4, 6 weeks. I'm covered, and I don't have to scramble every week to find a speaker. So I put down that definitely I would love to have a traditional observance as the topic for a meeting. I'm going off the top of my head with Brother Hammer's paper, or his book. So I'm going to go pull some quotes out of that and have that ready. And then if you have a talk that's already prepared, that'd be even better.
Go ahead.
Well, I was saying if you have a talk prepared, that's even better. But I really want to get the brothers discussing this. I like to get everyone who's attending to at least voice their opinion on it and really get a discussion going. I know it's enjoyable to sit and watch someone else read a paper, but in Research Lodge, we usually have a discussion after the paper is presented and people chime in. So the more I can encourage more talking amongst us, I think it's more beneficial to everybody. If you still want to lurk, fine. I'm not going to call on every one of you to speak every week. But so I think this is one of those topics that'll be interesting, and we can pursue that, but give it its own show. Right? I mean, we're talking about it well here, but I'm fixing to wrap this up, and I want to give it its own show and announce it. And let's get some talk going back and forth. Would you be interested in attending a traditional observance lodge? Is this something that appeals to you? And even if there are small pieces of that you could just go back to your lodge with and not make a radical change, but just say, we're going to make more of an effort to serve better meals, at least, once in a while at the stadiums, we're going to make an effort to have at least one meal a year, maybe, or every 3 months. That's a decent meal that you chip in more than $5 to eat, that you get something worthwhile and make it more of a special event. There are things you can do without totally changing your lodge into a TO lodge, because I agree, I don't think that'll sell. And that's where we got pushback. To answer Rodney's question, I don't think there are any TO lodges in Virginia. I was speaking of the one that was potentially going to be one. There may be some in the works, but I don't know. But I think after his experience, there probably aren't, but I don't know.
Brother Christopher, this is Kurt Sorensen. I'm from Wisconsin, Milton 161. I just had one question about the format. You mentioned a lot of the times the papers are scanned in. Are they usually available to read prior to this call to kind of get you ready to participate in any conversation?
Well, the papers that I'm referring to are the ones that I send out in a weekly email. They're
Okay.
separate from these presentations. I haven't considered whether to make a paper available. I think that'd be up to the individual speaker. We might consider that, but I don't know that I necessarily want that. But I don't know. I hear what you're saying. But the papers I'm referring to is I have a backlog of all of the research papers from Virginia Research Lodge that are all in paper form, and I've been scanning them and making them available through emails and putting on our website and in Facebook for brothers to read. So it comes out as a weekly email. And I'm only about a third of the way through those papers. So that's what I was referring to.
Okay, yeah, and I do appreciate you making those available. I saw that on your email announcing this event and started looking at that. I'm kind of the education point at my lodge, and so I'm finding that very, very interesting, starting to go through those papers. So thank you very much for that access.
Indeed.
With what you're saying, Neil, if you want a copy of my paper, if anyone here wants a copy of my paper, my email was in the chat forum, and I can type it out again if you'd like, and I'll send it to you.
Yep. I would like, well, let me just put it to you, Rodney. What do you think would be, as someone who has now gone through the grueling gauntlet that is Virginia Research's Zoom meeting, would it be beneficial for a paper like yours to be sent out ahead of time for people to read or just made available afterward? What do you think would be a better experience? I prefer to just hear it for the first time with you giving it and maybe then get it later to read. But that's just my take. But Kurt brought up the idea.
I kind of agree with you, Christopher, where if you hear it for the first time, it might invoke a lot of interest in the topic. And then afterwards, the brethren might be more interested and capable of going out there and doing their own research.
Okay.
That's just my own personal opinion, though, and I don't have a problem presenting or passing my paper out prior to as well.
Okay. Because, Brother Kurt, that is the custom, like within our research lodges, is someone will come and give a talk, and the first time anybody hears it is in the lodge, but then they provide it to the secretary, and then it's made available in our, we used to publish proceedings every year or so, and that kind of fell by the wayside. So usually the paper's made available after it's been given in the lodge.
Okay,
And I think that works better, just my opinion, but I think that works better.
Yeah, it was just a question. I misunderstood. Thought maybe I should have been reading it ahead.
Oh, no. I was referring to the papers that have been given in the lodge. And by the way, the A. Douglas Smith and George Washington Lodge have made their papers available to me. So I interspersed them with Virginia Research. I could probably spend about a year and a half to go through the rest of the papers just for Virginia Research and be caught up. But some of them I have all the books that were printed, and it's easy for me to scan them and digitize them. But we're going to have to go visit our Grand Lodge archives and look at the actual minutes for the first 30 years of our lodge and scan them. We just have the actual papers as, typewritten papers that we're going to have to scan. So it's going to be harder and harder for me to make them available, but they're available. We just need to make the trip to get them. But I appreciate all the other lodges making theirs available to us, and they're stored on our website as well. So if you visit our website, you can see all of them. I have a Spreading the Light page, which lists just the ones I've made available. I'm up to like 83 now, I think. So you can just go there and follow that list. But if you want to read ahead, I suppose you can go look, because as I'm scanning them, I'm putting them on the website, and I try to get 3 or 4 as a buffer and then release one a week. So if you want to read ahead of me, you can, but I recommend just reading the Spreading the Light to see the ones that have already been published. So you still have something to look forward to every week. But yeah, I think, Rodney, if you don't mind, Rodney, if you want to email me a copy, and we can release it as one of our weekly papers then in the future. I think that'd be good.
Yeah, Christopher, I definitely will. Right after here, I'll send it to you. And
okay,
I appreciate you passing that along your Research Lodge group members, because this is a paper I just recently finished writing, and this is the first presentation of my paper, and I hope to do many more in the near future. I know I got a few lodges I'm gonna be traveling to present this as well. I'm gonna bring it up to Grand Lodge at their founders meeting today. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it takes off.
Building. So.
Well, I do appreciate you being on. And I thought for your first presentation you did really well, but the more practice you get, the more polished you will be. So by all means, glad to be a part of that. Brother Neil, if you don't mind, if you to reach out to Andrew, I've tried to reach him because he did give one talk in Virginia Research Lodge, and that's where our secretary gave me a copy of his book to read. And I reached out to him just to get a copy of the paper he presented, because I would like to put it on our website and email it out. If you at least ask him to reach back to me, because he never returned any of my emails, but I had several for him and I never heard back. If he doesn't want it published, I understand, but at least tell me that and I'll stop trying to get a hold of it. You're mute. Sorry.
He was muted. Yeah, I'll rattle his chain for sure. And
I appreciate it.
Encourage him to talk to you. And I went to the Facebook page and I sent you a friend request so you and I can communicate in the background too.
Oh, very good. I thought we were. Yes, and I have put in the chat the link to our Facebook page. If you're here, you're either on the email list or you're already on our Facebook page, or you know somebody who is on our Facebook. Probably like Brother Brian, who has brought all of these ruffians into our space. But by all means, please join our group if you're not already. If you want to sign up for the papers, you can just post there. I will make another there's an announcement on there saying if you want the papers, message me. But you'll see me behind most of the posts. You can just click on that and send me a message. I'm easy to get a hold of, but I'd encourage all of you to sign up for the papers and join our group.
Okay.
Brother Paul, you joined us late. If you want to say hello. I see you're in your car. Brother Shosa.
Right next to him.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just in the sea.
Hello, brothers.
Greetings.
I was a bit occupied. I couldn't really hear. Good morning, brothers.
And what lodge are you from, brother?
I am from Mansfield Lodge 295 down here in Mansfield, Georgia.
Excellent. Glad to have you with us.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here, brother.
I saw you join late. I don't know if you caught the paper though.
I normally get papers on the emails you normally send out. I normally get those.
Okay.
However, I was able to join late today, so I said let me at least catch the later half.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad
I don't know. I've actually spoke with you on Facebook before. My name on there is Sadiq Al Farouk.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Okay. Well, to be fair, I've got 2,500 Facebook friends and over 1,050 of you individually signed up for the research papers. And yes, I keep bringing them up, bear with me, but I started out the research paper email, and because I'm webmaster for several bodies, everybody in Ocean View Lodge and Norfolk Scottish Rite and Virginia Research Chapter or Lodge automatically got added to the email list without wanting it, but no one's really complained. But then I decided to open it up and let individuals request to be added. So I have about 400 or 500 of my local lodge brothers who are I put in there on my own, and they all were happy to get it from what I've heard. But I started taking individual requests as well, and we now have over 1,050 individuals who signed up for the research papers, which is awesome. And I'm working out my email issues to make sure everyone actually gets it, but it is available on Facebook as well. So, and we have over 1,500 people on our Facebook group now. So this is definitely growing, and I'm pleased to have been part of growing this, feeding this interest in research papers and Masonry. And I'm trying to make more and more our Facebook group be of service to you all.
Yes.
Brother Brian's been good about putting out Zoom meetings that he hears of. And so any of you are encouraged to contribute more to the group. I mean, I don't like being the only guy making content. I'm happy to make the thing work, but I don't want to be the only one putting content on there. So I encourage all of you to post something.
Yes. And every email that you send out, I do get it, and I do read the lecture that you do send out. So thank you for
Excellent. Yes. And as always, if you read one of our papers and you want to present it in your lodge, you are welcome to. We only ask that you give credit to the author. So all you have to do is say, this was written by Brother so-and-so and given in Research Lodge on this date. That's all we ask. You're welcome to present them. Just make sure you give credit to the original author.
that. Of course.
And interesting note, I've said this before, but I don't mind repeating myself. If you think about it, if you attended Virginia Research Lodge in the 80s or 90s, around the time I joined, you had maybe 30 men in the room. As many people as we had on our Zoom meeting today, you had about 30 Masons in that room, and they heard a paper. It may be the only time that brother gave that paper. He may have given it to some other lodge another time, but at least 30 people heard it once. And then it was printed and put in the book and sent out. So maybe 50 or more members of the Research Lodge actually read it if they got the book and they read it. I'm taking those papers and I'm digitizing them and I'm emailing them to over 1,000 Masons directly. And then however many more people on Facebook, because I post on our group page, and then any other, I try to share with other Facebook groups. So there are literally thousands of men who get to read this paper that some brother wrote 30 years ago and may have been totally forgotten. He may be long since dead. Maybe only 30 people read that paper originally, but we're able to make that available to thousands of Masons all around the world. And I think that's just awesome. There's a lot of good content in these papers, and we're sharing these ideas with a much broader audience, and who knows what it's inspiring out there. Other people might get interested. Hey, I could write a paper. I think I could do that, and make an effort to do more Masonic research and read more of these papers. And I think that's it's a great thing to be a part of in my own small contribution.
I think that's one of the positive things we can say came out of this pandemic. You know, because of this pandemic, there's a whole lot more lectures being given. There's a whole lot more interest in Masonic education.
You already have tried it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All right. Any other brother have anything to offer? We're reaching 11:30 local time, so I think I need to cut it off. If any other brother wants to say hello or announce anything coming up, please do. I will make the chat available on the website or the Facebook group once we're done, and this should be on YouTube within a week, I hope. So I'll open up the floor, and anybody else got anything to say before we break?
Actually, no, I think I lied. I think I killed.
This is where one of you jumps in and is all profound on me.
Well, Chris, I gotta take off myself.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me onto your show here, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. I just sent you the paper, so you have access to that, and feel free to spread the word wherever you'd like. Take care. Have a great weekend, brethren. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you, brethren, for attending. I'll see you all next time. Bye.
Oh yeah.